Well, hello, hello, everybody. We are back again for another Other Ink Thursday, and this time I am joined by Chris Tatum, who is the CFO of Lurking Fears, and Betty Tatum, who is the uh, events manager for Lurking Fears. And you also, guys, you two do a lot of con stuff. We're going to talk about Free League. And I'm sure stuff that I don't even. I got my Nerd Louisville shirt on. Are you guys involved
There
in
you
Nerd
go.
Louisville?
Yeah.
So anyway, we're here to talk about a bunch of stuff with the two of you. So thank you for being on my interview.
Thank you. Yeah,
Thank
we
you.
appreciate you inviting us in.
Yeah, I mean,
Absolutely.
it's like I'm going down the webpage at Lurking Fears and like talk to Matt, talk to Jonathan, I'm gonna talk to you two. Like I talked to at the time of recording, I already recorded with one of your GMs, and that's
Mm.
gonna come out later. Like Ed Malavy,
Yep.
or Molave, just
Oh, Edwin. Yeah,
yeah,
love my
Edwin.
Edwin.
Edwin is great. It was a lovely conversation. But the the it's this whole project of talking to all the Lurking Fears people. It's partly because like, hey, Louisville has like maybe more impact than people realize,
Mhm.
which I find interesting. And then also, it's just I've talked to so many designers of games and artists for games and stuff like that, and there's a very visceral sort of like, oh, I made a game and I wrote these words and I drew these pictures and that's what people are seeing. But then there's this vast world of like behind the scenes work that happens to make like the industry in the broadest sense a success. So like that's all the business people and the layout artists and the con staff and the people in the game rooms running the game. So you two are both part of that, and so that's why I wanted to talk to you. But before all of that, like I would assume that you all are gamers also. Like you're not just doing this
All right.
because
All
it's
right.
just product, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I am the permanent GM for our long-standing, long-suffering role-play group. We've been together as a couple for 20-ish years.
Hmm.
And in that time, I was the one
Yeah.
that introduced her to all of my friends at that time. And I had a regular group. We played Dungeons and Dragons, Star Wars, the old D6 West End game system. We moved through a couple others. We had a homebrew game we played for a long time. And I was the guy behind the screen 90% of the time.
Amazing.
So I've been doing this now for 30 years, maybe longer. So, I brought her in. She loved it. We stayed together. It just became a part of our lives. Even when
Sure.
we moved briefly away from Louisville for a couple of years, we still maintained connections here. We still would go back and play when we could because we still had family and plenty of friends here. And we started to game up there as well. So gaming has always been in my blood, right? It's always been something that we both hold near and dear. And game mastering is is just a way of life for me. I don't even think twice about it. You can hand me a game, tell me I got to run it, and it doesn't matter. I've done it in front of strangers. I've done it in front of friends. I've done it in large groups. I've done it with a few people.
Yeah.
So, it is just what I do now. So it'll be entombed on my gravestone. And then I have my permanent player wife as well. So I'll let her speak to how good of a game master I am. But there's been plenty of nights where one or both of us have slept on different couches because someone died.
Mm.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Um,
So, 27 years. I calculated it up.
there it is.
So
27 years.
27.
I mean, that's a long time to play with the same group of people. That's a very long time to play with the same group of
Yeah.
people.
Now, to
Yeah.
be fair, that roster has changed over the years, but there are a
It's
few
rotated
that
out.
still come back. It's shifted. Lives happen, kids happen, jobs happen, moves happen. But it's been a steady presence in our life,
Hmm.
so much that we are sort of the central point around which many of those people's gaming lives kind of revolve. So,
Yeah.
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 That's so
Yeah.
Betty, tell me what your like I mean Chris gave the list there of like the games that have been played, but like so what's your you got like a character, a favorite character that like you played in one of those games, or like a moment like
No.
it doesn't have to be a we slept on different couches afterwards story, like, but like what's the it doesn't have to be that story. I don't want that story. But the what's like a memorable game that you've had together then?
Oh, let's see. I remember, so we have three kids. For those who don't know us, all of our children are adults, by the way. But when the two oldest boys were hitting a point where we were introducing them into role playing, we decided to go with DC Heroes. So it was a pretty simple system. You know, you can be a superhero, you can go save somebody, you can be as goofy as you want to be. Kids love it. It's awesome. Adults love it. What am I saying? But so in preparation, like Chris said, we've had a regular weekly game every for 24 of those 27 years. And the majority of the time, including now, we are the house that hosts.
Yeah.
So we have not only taught our own kids how to role play, but we've taught like our friends' kids how to role play and things like that. Well, in preparation for this big family superhero game, we started a DC campaign, and I did have a great. I did get a little attached to that character. It was kind of a Charles Xavier type character,
All right. All
um,
right.
mixed with a little Jean Grey. So there was a local sanatorium that had its own wing named after me because I sent so many people there. But it was, but it was fun. We had some fun. But yeah, so I think the first system that I learned was the homebrew campaign that Chris and a few of his friends were running,
Oh,
and it was based on the old Ninja Turtle system.
the old Palladium system. Oh, oof. Never again. Never again.
I
But
mean, you
yeah.
like old Ninja Turtles, like the Palladium one, right? That's what you just said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, so
Yeah.
I'm an old hat at Palladium, so
Mhm.
that's just I know what that water is. That's fine. I can swim in that water.
Yeah.
But uh,
Yeah.
Yeah,
um,
so that's what I learned on.
Listen, we all stumble. No one's perfect, so it's just, you
it's
know.
not a look. I don't know. I don't need to be the Palladium defender of any
Mm,
kind, but like it is sort of like I always say it's like my go-to when I think of like what a role-playing game is. I'm
mm,
picturing the Palladium books because that's how I started, right?
right.
So anyway, that's yeah, it's I don't know. Is it near and dear to my heart? Not exactly, but it is very at the base of like my understanding of role-playing games. So
Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it can be a challenge. It can be a challenge to get through the bio-y manipulation charts and all that
Really
stuff.
polite of you. It truly is very polite of you. And again, it's near and dear, but it's like you didn't know what was any better, right? And
Mm.
we
Yeah.
can give it credit for what it was at its time, and it has some compelling elements, but so many more people have done it so much better since then. So,
Well,
Oh yeah.
sure. Yeah. I mean, their games have evolved, you know.
yeah,
We get into Brandon, you know Brandon, my business partner Brandon, like he always talks about how Settlers of Catan is a bad game. And I'm
yeah,
like, no, 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 no. It was like a revolutionary design and like it's so ahead of its time for like 1992 or whenever when it came out. And it's like, but it's still like not good, you know, it's very
right.
simple and you know, it doesn't offer a lot of choices and stuff like that. And I'm like,
Yeah,
but context. I don't know. So it's the same debate anyway.
sure.
Um, so did like how did then because like I mean Lurking Fears hasn't been around for that long, but
Mm.
that's kind of like was Matt McLeod part of your gaming group? Is because he's kind of the genesis, as far as I understand, of the whole Lurking
Yes,
Fears
yeah.
project.
Yeah.
So was he already connected with you, or was that just because you're nerds in Louisville and
Yeah,
you
we
had run
we just
into
sort
each
of cross
other?
paths. So I had a vision for something similar to this before. So the genesis actually came from a little thing I attempted to create called Armchair Adventures. I had Betty behind me, and I had another partner, and we still stay in touch, but he was kind of the sales figure. I'm a behind the scenes guy. I always will be, and I think I had enough business sense to recognize even in that guy, well, hey, he's kind of, he's a good face person, right? So let's see if we can't come together and create something, well, ironically similar to what Lurking Fears is doing now. And with the dream of like a 5-year plan of putting on a big convention in Louisville, Kentucky,
Mm,
because I recognize the size and scope and scale of the community we have here. And honestly, COVID kind of killed it, is really
sure.
what it boils down to. We were still trying to figure each other out, and then COVID came along, and we're just like, this business model isn't going to work. But through that organization and a couple of our attempts is how we actually sort of came to know Matt McLeod, because he knew people who knew us, who, they invited him. And one of our first little, we'll call this mini events, right? We just rented out a community hall and had like 30 or 40 people come by, and we'll call it a convention, but really it was just a get together. We were feeling it out, and he was one of them that came. So we just kind of took it from there. So to sum it up, Betty.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of started the friendship. You know, we all love games. We all love role playing games, and well, I mean, Matthew, like Louisville has got a strong nerd community. Like it's kind of and it's tight. Like everybody knows everybody. So, we kept gaming with Matt and messaging, and we went to some conventions with him and helped him out when he, you know, um, Lurking Fears was just getting off its feet, and we saw like it was easy to see that what he had created and what was on the ground floor could really evolve into something big and good and
Mm,
great,
yeah.
but it's too much for one person to carry,
Mhm.
so like there was and we got to know Jonathan through Nerd Louisville, and actually we got to know Jonathan before Nerd Louisville. We got to go Jonathan, I think, at Origins
Mhm.
one year, and Matt, had some medical issue that he was unable to a convention. And Chris and Jonathan and I were like, hey, we're here for you. We're going to step in and we're going to take this and we're going to run with it. And we did. And we quickly found out that the four of us really are like the legs of a table. We all have different strengths, but the four of us together make a hell of a team. So,
Yeah. I mean that's I mean that always I love that analogy.
Yeah.
It's always good. Like you gotta have at least three legs for a table to stand up. So like,
right.
Matt can go down for a little while, but you've still got the other people. Like
Yeah.
that's how it works.
And
Um,
Matt being the face, and let's give him credit where credit's due. It
mhm.
just answered a simple question. Any good business model is gonna be the answer to a simple question, which is how do players get exposed to games? And the answer is at conventions is they're exposed at the tables. So Matt answered that question by saying, okay, well, I'll get together some of the best GMs I know, and we'll represent these games at the tables. And that is the fundamental business proposition for Lurking Fears, is we are at the heart of it. While we're doing other things now too, we're attempting to be a marketing company for games that either don't have the bandwidth or would simply just like to outsource that to get a good quality experience at the table for the game, for the players to then sell those games, is really what we're out for. And, that's where Betty and I come in with the business sense. Matt had a great idea. He put together a network of people, but we're behind the scenes helping him make that a reality, right? Because there's
Right.
so much more to it. So,
Well, and you talked about business model, and like that's kind of the question then, because like when I first connected with Lurking Fears and what Matt was doing or trying to do, it was just in my mind it was like a volunteer thing with like because people volunteer to run games at cons all the time. Like,
sure.
the almost the entire basis of those games being run is like, oh well, I mean, you get a small amount of like if you run enough games, you get your badge kind of thing, but that's not really like a business prospect. That's sort of like a very low level sort of of a feedback loop or whatever. You run some games, you get your free badge, at least that's covered, and then you're just doing it because you want to run a bunch of games all weekend. And then but what if those people all got a room together and it was all kind of organized? There's still not really a business proposition there. So like who's was it your idea to be like, well, we need to take this back to the publishers or where did because that's like a different pitch than
It is. It is.
hey, we've got a group of GMs and you'll have fun if you come play our games. There's kind of
it's
it's a
the professionalization of the hobby, right? It's exactly what it is, and you see it in a couple of websites as well, where you have quote professional GMs, and that's where we're trying to differentiate ourselves. I'll let Betty tell. Just pick one of them, Betty. Any of the horror stories of some of the other conventions we've been to, where we've sat at a table where someone just ran a game for us. Go ahead, hon. You've got some great.
Oh, I got a good one. I got
Yeah,
a good one.
sure.
All right. So I won't say because it's a smaller convention, so I won't give the name of the convention, but it's a small convention. So I went and I signed up for a game and sat down at the table, and I wish I was lying when I said the GM sat down, took the module out of its plastic wrap, and was like, "This is the first time I've ever ran a game before." So, like, instantly you're like, okay, it would be rude if I got up and left right now. Like, so I kind of stuck here in this situation. But then, like, this particular GM started to read, just like allow the module, like, oh, I don't think I was supposed to read that. I mean, it's just one of those horror stories. And you're like, oh, no, this is not happening.
I mean, it's every game has to be. I mean, some game has to be somebody's first game to run. Like that's a
Right.
big step. But like, if you're at a con, especially now that like conventions are, even though it's a nominal fee,
Yeah.
$4 or whatever to go book a book a seat at a con, you don't want to necessarily have an experience like that, where
Right.
somebody.
Right, exactly. And what we're attempting to, and I think at some level succeeding, is when people see lurking fears, they have at least a guarantee of some level of quality. You're not going to have people that are popping that open because trust me when I say those GMs don't come back. If we find out, if we even catch a whiff that we have somebody at one of our tables that's doing anything remotely like that,
Mhm.
they don't get invited back, right? We're not big enough to have quote employees, but these GMs are compensated as we can, depending upon what sort of deals we strike with the publishers and even our own internal resources. And the understanding is they run a quality game, right? But they're handpicked too. Like we pick what we can find as far as the best, and we do our best to gather as much feedback from the players, keep them in check. Right? Anybody can have a bad day, but if they're always having a bad day, are they really the great GM we thought they were? I
Mm.
don't know. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that's, plus um, we want our GMs to be able to focus on the game.
yeah,
So I do, a lot of, well, I do, and the rest of the team does a lot of behind the scenes stuff so that the GMs have the materials they need, the scenario to run. If it's a new scenario or a new system, and we have contacts with the publisher or the creator of the scenario and they're willing to provide some sort of feedback, then we can sit down ahead of time and go, okay, we have this new system that, you know, these GMs are running. They've all been provided with the materials and there's some questions. Do you have like an hour to meet with them and answer some questions to make sure that they're representing and playing the game right? Because, you know, as a player, when you go to conventions, or I always went to conventions to try out games that I didn't get to play at home. Because just because I have a home group doesn't mean that they play the
Uh,
types of games I favor.
I mean, there's too many games also, but
Yes.
yes.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, you know, I've got to go to a convention and sign up for the games that I really am into, or before I go spend X amount of dollars on this system or these books,
Yeah.
I want to sit down and play it.
Yeah. So I have a question about like, and this will kind of begin to move into another topic here, but there's a at this point, like, because like from the point of view of like a convention, like they don't really care whether or not the GM has the appropriate materials from the publisher.
Right.
Like at least in my experience, nobody is checking that kind of thing
No.
at the level of the convention, you
Right.
know. So at this point though, because you've started to work with publishers and to build those relationships with publishers and to offer yourself, as you said, Chris, a marketing opportunity for the publishers to then connect to the players. If a player comes in and is like, oh, I want to play this game, I don't know, the first one that comes off the top of my head is Paranoia. Like, I want to play
Mhm.
Paranoia. And it's like, well, we don't have a relationship with whoever publishes that game. Sorry, you can't do that because that's not going to get, we haven't established that relationship. Is there room for people to bring in game? Is there room for your GMs to bring in games that, or to invite you to be like, hey, could you reach out to them? Like, how does that work? Or
Yeah.
does it still
Yeah.
work that way? Um,
Absolutely. You know, we want to keep our game masters happy, especially the ones that are doing the best work. And there's plenty of them still that want to bring some games that they just enjoy running, right? And they always have the opportunity when space allows to run those games in our rooms, right? We're still sort of a conglomerate of game masters in that regard. You know, speaking to what Betty does really well for the organization and something that as a convention GM of years past as well there's a lot of comfort in knowing that I can just go to the same room each time, run the game, right? All I got to do is look at the person at the admin desk, go, which table am I at, right?
mhm.
You know, I can leave my stuff there and go enjoy the convention. When I was doing it solo on my own, I was in 4 different hotels across the entirety of downtown Indianapolis. I didn't know exactly where to go. I had to figure out how to get my badge. You know, there was a whole host of things that we have greased that so the game master comes in, they concentrate on the game, they have a
Yeah.
good time, the players have a great time, and then they can go enjoy the rest of their con. So,
Yeah,
Yeah.
the having the
Yeah.
home base at the con, even if, because we've done that for like our writers and stuff that have worked with us. Like, can I stick my backpack behind the booth and while I go do
Mhm.
this other thing? I'm like, absolutely, Fred. Here, set it down
Yeah.
back here. Um, yeah. What were you gonna say, Betty?
Well, I was going to say, yeah, so we do have, you know, so there are the publishers that we work with directly, and we always make sure that we have the number of tables and areas that we need to run their games. But sometimes we always have, you know, sometimes we have extra room, and those are, you know, we have GMs who are creating their own systems, you know, so we want to make sure that they have an opportunity to play test their games, you know, because they may be small right now, they may be just getting started, but you know, everybody can make it. I mean, you know, everybody knows everybody in the here, so we want to be able to give everybody a platform. So we focus on the publishers that we're working with and making sure all their tables are set. And then I usually have a number of cushion tables that I build in for things like that, or any late publishers to the game,
yeah.
because that happens where, say that we haven't worked with a publisher before, and then they're all of a sudden like, hey, I really want a presence at this convention, but it's, a little too late. And at that point, I can be like, oh, I've got some space. Let's see what we can do for you. so,
So
so
we
yeah,
pack them in, and and to that as well. I mean, there's just again, you've said it. The field is pretty crowded, so we literally and logistically could never have every single game a player might want in our rooms. It's
For sure.
just never going to happen. And there are groups that run certain systems exclusively. Baldman Games. I'll just go ahead and name drop them, or basically exclusive to Dungeons and Dragons. And, they have stamped their seal, quality seal on everything, saying, hey, you come to our rooms, this is what you're going to get when you get here. You're going to get Dungeons and Dragons. And, this is whatever level of quality they've managed out of the folks that are running their games. So, the ones that we offer, and that's strategically where, we've worked at, but also lucked into some really great publishers, and I think we've got some great relationships that make Lurking Fears a little bit more visible to the gaming community. So,
Well, yeah, I think that's you're talking about name dropping. Let's this is the next thing. Let's drop the next big name. I mean, Free League is kind of the I was there's almost like there's a Venn diagram of some sort, and I don't know how big the overlap is between like
pretty big.
Free League's con presence and Lurking Fears and what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
And it just keeps getting the overlap is bigger this year than it's ever been. They had I talked to Jonathan a lot about this earlier in the year about like the 2 hour demo room for Dragonbane, like the extra room that wasn't the Lurking Fears room, but it was the Lurking Fears room because you while we're running it and it was just 2 hour demos of Dragonbane right next to the hall and
Yeah.
almost practically within sight of not quite, but like very nearly in sight of the dragon or the Free League booth.
Yeah.
Um,
yeah,
and so that's like a whole new level of like that kind of involvement for Lurking Fears. And so, I, I mean, I don't even know how to ask the question, but like, can you talk about that overlap between like, oh, well, and you're running booths, like you're the person on the con floor,
Yeah.
you know, and I assume that implies that you're the one, and I know it is because you were at Gamehole Con talking about having to find a shipper
Yeah.
to ship out the
yeah,
pallets of stuff, so like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
not free, that's not Lurking Fears work anymore. That's like Free League work. So like,
Well, that's a great question. We've designed it contractually. So if for any reason, we needed to design, if for any reason they or us needed to move away, we're only locked into as much as they and us have signed for. And let's be really clear on that. But they approached us last year, and said, we need some help. And we just stepped up and we said, okay, right? We've talked a little bit about that side of the business, or the event management side of the business, which was the goal of Lurking Fears, right? Just to have the game rooms, the convention presence. But them approaching us with the point of sale, the merchandising, the selling of merchandise, has supported the business and has helped us to build the relationship with them and lend some validity to the business as well. Because otherwise, it's just kind of a loosely knit group of friends, and maybe we're leveraging the size and the scale and name recognition to pitch to publishers to say, hey, get some tables in our room, but now we can also sell your stuff too.
mhm.
Free League saw
yeah,
that. They're Swedish, and they were like, well, yeah, we don't really have much in the way of boots on the ground in the United States. Can you assist with that? And we said, sure, we'd love to. And it blossomed from there. So Betty's in pretty regular contact with their primary marketing person, and coordinates a lot of not only the point of sale stuff, but also the event management stuff. Want to add anything to that, Betty?
yeah. So yeah, so Lurking Fears, we've mainly talked about the event management side of it, but as a business, Lurking Fears LLC has got easiest thing I could say has a buffet of services. So
Good.
the publishers can pick what they need. So There are many publishers that are located inside the US, but there are also a great number of publishers outside of the US. So for some publishers, we are only event management where we run their games. We make sure we handle all the event management part of that, whether it be within the Lurking Fears gaming room or it be running it in a publisher specific room, like we do with Free League at Gen Con. Or we also do have a point of sale model where Lurking Fears acts as a point of sale entity within the United States because we have the skill set to navigate, all of the lovely U.S. state and federal tax laws and business licensures and
Yeah.
all of that.
You have the
business.
ability to navigate. This
Yeah.
is a euphemism of some sort, I think.
It's a lot. I mean, well,
You
because
make
you
it sound
go out.
euphemism for the amount of work that is. Like all you have
Yeah.
to do is navigate the whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
There's a logistics piece because you like when you're smaller, when your booth is smaller, you can and you're um, depending on where your product is, because we've helped other publishers, smaller publishers before, and we were able to,
Betty and I, just to be really
yeah,
clear, aside from
yeah.
Lurking Fears. So yeah.
And we were able to help transport that product to the convention, because it wasn't like we were dealing with pallets full of product. These were product that could fit, inside a vehicle or two. But then, obviously with Free League, that's not the case. There's a logistics component to it that Chris and I, both from our day jobs, have experience with. So
Yeah.
we just kind of bring some of those skills that we've acquired over the years during our day job into play and utilize
Right.
them.
So I mean, I have 100 more questions about like the con presence and stuff like that, but like I want to pick up on that piece that you just said because like I can't remember who it was. It was probably Jonathan or Matt. One of the two was like, oh, Betty and Chris, they have so much like retail experience, and I'm like, what? I don't know what that is. So they tell me what that is. Like have like the
Yeah.
shipping like
Let me start on that. Yeah, no, I'm picking up what you're putting down. So, I was custom made for this business, it seems. So I started running Barnes and Nobles back in college, and basically like after I left college, I just ran a bunch of their stores. So I've run or helped run 6 or 7 Barnes and Nobles, like right out of college for about 17 years. So I had a really strong book retail
yeah,
and
yeah.
management experience. It was formative and transformative. But you remember Borders, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So when Borders closed, I said, hang on, not sure this business is going to be around. And they've been hanging on, bless their heart, they've been hanging
Well,
on.
they have
Other
so little competition now that Borders is
Right.
gone.
Yeah. Yeah. No kidding. But I went back and finished up a degree in accounting. Went back to school while working full time. It was a busy couple of years, and I got out of the business, and that's when I went into corporate finance. And through corporate finance, I've been exposed to manufacturing. I've been exposed to some quality. And in my new role, which is kind of quality adjacent, still has a little bit of finance in it. Our company does a ton of shipping. And, this is again our day job things. So I have
All of those
this.
sound extremely relevant to
Yeah,
like
right. It's just this basket. It's just this basket full of, mismatched skills that in any other circumstance may not have been the best fit, but they somehow all seem to work really well. Add on to that Betty's like project management experience for
Yeah.
sort of event management and operations, and together we're Captain Planet effectively, right? We all got little rings with tossing them up and conjuring up Lurking Fears Captain Planet. I don't know. So
uh
Yeah.
that's a lovely image. All when your powers combined.
right.
The so I'll ask if Betty's got the experience with like project management or whatever. So one of the other things that I was kind of thinking about was like comparing a booth at a convention to sort of a pop-up retail space. I mean, it is. It's like you effectively have to get you have to get the physical point of sale, the staff, the product in this physical location, and it's only going to be there for 4 days, and then it all goes away again. But then it's like in the case of like especially with the free league stuff, it like doesn't really go away again. It just goes on the truck and goes to the next event. So is it more so maybe a pop-up analogy is not really apt? Like I don't know, like what is it like is each event sort of separate or is it that like oh no, it's just it's here this weekend, it is more of a
So, I mean,
logistics project than a
there is going
I'll
to
let Betty speak
be,
to that. Yeah.
yeah, there are certain tasks that are like, if I was approaching this from like a project management or event management tracking, there's certain tasks that you're always going to have to complete at every convention. So, each convention has its own regulatory things that you're going to have to make sure are done in a timely manner. Now, Free League has their own US staff. And what I mean by that is they have an existing team of people that work the booths. And, so I mean, we haven't had to do a
Staff it.
lot on that front, except for, we've added a few folks here and there just to kind of round out the map, so that we can say, hey, these people are located in this area of the United States. They're close to these conventions. These folks are located in this area. They're close to these conventions, things like that. And of course, you always want people who are passionate in the booth, but also reliable, and want to be there. I mean, that's like anybody, you
right.
yeah, that's just common sense.
Yeah.
So there are certain things that are always going to be done at every convention. We make the calendar out like with the point of sale for Free League. That is largely done, that's a very cooperative process with Free League leading the gate on that. And the my point of contact, she is amazing project management skills as well. So we vibe really well together. So, we're sitting down at Gen Con making out the calendar for 2025,
Yeah.
but like just from insular lurking fears perspective, from like our event management, our point of sale, what our goals are for 2025, we had our 2025 calendar ideally made out in September of this year.
Roughly. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is where we want to try to be in 2025.
Yeah.
That was one question that I had. You mentioned earlier that like a publisher comes in quote unquote too late and like that was something that I like what is your timeline about how I mean, either from the Free League perspective or more generally the lurking fear stuff like how I mean you just said you're planning stuff out for next year is already happened which next year is like I don't know 8 weeks away or whatever something like that less than 8 weeks away um
We're arguably in like April or May already. So, and we're already talking about like June and July and August.
right.
So, yeah,
Well, right. I mean, if you
we're
haven't started talking about,
yeah,
next Gen Con already, it's almost too late at this point. You
right.
know,
Yeah, I
which is
mean,
wild
well,
that it
so
works
that
that way.
it kind of, there's a couple of things with each convention. Really the convention organizers and the convention demand, with other vendors and other event managers. So like kind of drive that deadline. So for like, I'll use Gamehole Con as an example. I know from an event management, like organizing games, if we're going to have, request a game room, I know I have on my calendar to reach out to them in January. Even though Gamehole Con isn't till October, I got to lock in that room. Like I got to lock in that space. And that tells me, all right, this is the number of tables that we're going to try to drive. Now, with Gen Con and Origins, because Lurking Fears also puts on special events for those where, like our special event planning has already started, and we have teams working on those already, even though the conventions themselves aren't until, you know, June and August of next year.
Mhm.
Um, those are those are already in progress now. Origins, I think I worked with the organizer for Origins. That convention is in June, and it was probably late September, early October when I met with them. Gen Con, you have a little bit of and a very small amount of wiggle room. So for
Yeah.
if it's a publisher specific room, because that kind of falls on the publisher to say, hey, because with Gen Con, there's things that Gen Con requires from the publisher for that. So they drive that discussion. And that timeline is pretty early. But generally for Gen Con, anything that you're going to request special, if you're waiting past January, you're too late. Like now, if it's just I want a handful of games, like there's leeway with that. But if you're wanting
Yeah.
something special or your own room or like a major event or things like that,
So you
yeah.
mentioned extra services, and I kind of want to ask about that, but this seems like that's the kind of thing. Like, is that sort of like if I'm coming, like, I don't know, I'm a new publisher, Toad in the Hole Games, and I want to work with Lurking Fears. I don't know anything about con stuff, and I'm having a conversation with the two of you or whatever about like, and then you're like, you're is that sort of like is that just like part of the package deal of working with Lurking Fears is like you get all this insider, like here are your dates that you'll need to do, and you'll need to here's the people at Gen Con that you'd need to talk to by these dates, and then like is that sort of the broader suite of services that you're providing, or is that not?
It's yeah, it's part of it. The every single publisher we've worked with have to have at least a vision of what they want, even if it's
Mm,
something as simple as just having the game featured at a couple tables. Fine, great, we can absolutely do that. But those conversations they start early, they go on for a while, and they become a sort of vision of how Lurking Fears can help facilitate that publisher's vision of what they want out of that convention or series of conventions, either, where we can not only run games, but we're trying to offer up point of sale services. We can say, hey, we'll gladly staff a booth for you. Let's talk inventory, let's talk logistics. We'll do some special events for you. You want something, that really makes your game feature and stand out. Let's talk. Let's do it. Let's talk about what we need from you, what you would like that to be. And then lastly, we have sort of, we'll call it the fourth leg of our business model, where we know a lot of, we'll call them celebrities, gaming celebrities, dungeon tubers, if you will, that Matt's cultivated over the years, and Jonathan is insinuating himself in, as a member of as well. It seems, with the whole Mr. Dragonbane thing. God love him for that. And these people want to do extra things. They want to get their presence put out in front of their fans. They want that FaceTime, and we offer that. So again, they don't have to worry about the logistics of it. We can plan it for them. We can guide them through it. We can make sure that they know where they're supposed to be, when they're supposed to be there, have people to help them out with those things. We've done panels, we've done live plays, we've done special tables where they've run games for us, premium games. So that's the sort of fourth piece of the business that we sort of didn't talk about, but it's the bow on the top of the cake that Lurking Fears offers, where it's like, hey, we can do all of this, and we can get you exposed, through, YouTuber Y or Z
yeah,
or
yeah.
X or whoever. So yeah.
And that's again, I think, I mean, that was you kind of did it already, but that's sort of like I was gonna like, what are you talked about like offering a suite of services, and so
Mhm.
that's that. So you said so four of them. So you got this sort of like premium bonus. I mean, that's I've heard about some of those plans, and I know Brandon he was in a Shadow Dark game, or not Shadow Dark.
Oh
What's
yeah.
the, I think this was at Pat or
I think he did it at Origins
at
last year.
Origins. It
Mm.
was Matt
Yep.
and Chris O'Neill and Brandon. They were in with Kelsey, the creator, and
Yeah.
that.
Mhm.
So that's one of those sort of like
Mm.
cool things that got arranged that takes all that kind of coordination or whatever.
Yeah.
Then get your games run,
Mm.
sort of the in quote unquote entry level sort of thing. You're talking about point of sale stuff, and then so maybe I missed the fourth one or
The fourth one is just kind of event management plus. So it's big special events. The two that we really lean into because they've definitely been our most successful would have been last year's Cthulhu Masters tournament at
Mhm.
Origins. And then we also did an 8 hour The One Ring epic game that had a lot of extras included in it. We brought in a cosplayer to sort of act as an important NPC quest giver. We ran the games that there were a total of 8 tables, but they all took slightly different paths to get to the exact same big battle at the end. So it felt very large and epic,
yeah,
hence
yeah,
the epic thing. So we've been offering those services to, the publishers as well, saying, "Hey, we'll design this for you, or if you have something along those lines that you want us to run, here it is." We'll call it Event Management Plus is probably the
yeah.
best way to put it. Yeah.
That's I think maybe Jonathan told me about that, but like
Mm.
conceiving of it in exactly the terms that you said it, I wasn't quite there. So like that's I mean it's a great suite of services, right? And like I don't even know how to like I mean obviously that's like work. I don't even know what I want to ask about it, but just like there it is. Like those are it's like it is so much more than getting the games run.
Yeah.
I don't know, because it takes so much more interactions, right? Like
Yeah.
it's the just organizing a room full of people to play games is like GMs and players, and then attendees of the con. But then if you bring in the publishers, and then you have publishers promoting things with sort of celebrity type or gaming celebrity type people. I mean, now you're reaching out to like all these different groups of people. Like it's that that's like a real I mean obviously that's like a real job. Like this isn't like a hobby.
Yeah, it
Like
does
this is
feel
a
like
real this is a real job that you all are doing in addition to like your day jobs.
Yeah.
yeah,
It's a big task.
Betty
it
mentioned it,
is.
that it's really fortunate our kids are grown because there's no way in hell this
Yeah,
would have ever happened with any kids younger than college age. It just wouldn't have.
Yeah.
Our
yeah,
lives were way too busy before that. So again, we both come with this little smorgasbord of extra skills, to keep it to make it a business really. And
Right.
then, our personal lives have opened up considerably since the kids are out on their own, more or less, or
yeah.
in college. And here we are. So we took our hobby, which we loved, we've had together for decades, and now we're just kind of, we're I hate the term, but making it our side gig, right? But the
Sure.
point, the dream would be this is either our retirement plan or maybe it becomes our day job. Who knows? So who
Right.
knows?
It's I mean it's the kind of the thing that I don't know. It takes so much work, and yeah, it could be your whole job if the numbers worked out and you could pay yourselves everybody involved and like all that stuff. I mean there's certainly enough work to do there. And then I think about something like True Dungeon or whatever, which is like enormous, and they take up all of this space on any con that they're at. And I'm sure it's full of people who are doing it. And like even from my own, like I'm running like 10 by 20 booths, and like with like 3 volunteers, and that's like it's almost too much for me, right? But then like to imagine the kind of stuff you're talked about, and then even bigger when you're renting a whole room and a whole staff of cosplayers to make an event happen, like there's always more. There's always bigger things that you could do, I guess.
Yep.
So on that note, like I guess what is the near term goals? Like what other kind of like for Lurking Fears, what kind of other services are you looking to offer? Like, are you soliciting for like, let us be your POS actively? Like what's the near goals? If you've already got your 2025 planned out, what are some of the things that you're
Well,
looking
I
for?
mean, So we started having, I mean, I don't know that starting having, like, we're always having conversations with publishers. Like, that's, it's just kind of an ongoing thing. I mean, I guess, like, we were talking the other day. You don't realize how small the community is until you're in the community, and then you're like, oh wow, everybody really does know everybody. Like,
I mean, it's a lot. I feel like I know a lot of people, but then I meet other people and they're talking about people that I don't know. So it is
yeah,
yeah,
but
I don't think I think yeah, you're never too far away, or too many steps
yeah,
away.
yeah. So I mean, we're gamers at heart. So all of us are gamers at heart. So everybody's always like, oh my gosh, did you see so and so's coming out with this game? Oh my gosh, that would be great to have. Like, we should reach out to them.
Mhm.
you know, but we check in. We had a flurry of publisher calls, meetings, towards the end of the year before we started 2025 planning, just to make sure that we were um, we had a better idea of what kind of scope of presence we needed to have, especially at some of the larger cons. And those conversations never really stop. Like, Matt and Jonathan are always continuing those conversations. I am usually buried in event management and POS stuff.
And I'm
So
kind of the back end of it all. So
Mhm.
yeah.
a bookkeeper. I'm doing taxes, doing tax compliance, especially now that we're in all these different states.
Mhm.
Following them around. That's its own little job. But also, as far as a 5-year plan, it's at the moment in the short term, it's perfecting these four things that we do,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
finding out how to best scale up so it becomes a more professional operation than it already is. And then beyond that, maybe a little pipe dreamy, but what's the harm in us trying to put on our own convention here in Louisville, right? That's
Right.
really that's my pie in the sky dream at the moment, right? I don't know how doable it is, but it's always been something I felt that no one locally has ever gotten right. Right. We've been to plenty, but
Right. I mean I'm ditching my the question I had in my mind to talk about this instead because I
Mm,
think that this is Nerd Louisville has put on some good events in the
sure,
past, but
sure,
it's been since the pandemic and the organization it got knocked down by the pandemic and hasn't
yep.
really had the oomph that it had uh, those years. And there was you were mentioned earlier talking about I was thinking about conglomeration back in the
Hmm.
day and
Mhm.
Yep.
the way that
Yeah.
it had already been announced that 2020 was going to be the last year,
And it just sort of, yeah.
and then they had to cancel it
Hmm.
because of 2020, and they're like, well, I guess we don't have a last year after all, or whatever. But it's like somebody had run that. It was like the 20th one, I think, or the 19th one, or something like that. I mean, but the people had been running it for a long time,
Yeah.
um, and then we had, I mean, the PopCon is here in Louisville
Mhm.
last year and this year, and I went to that, and it's not really a gaming convention. It's a meet actors and shake hands with wrestlers kind of convention,
Yeah.
which is, I guess, fun for those people, but it's not they had like a board game room there because I went and talked to some people there, but it was not that kind of convention. So
Yeah.
there seems like there could be there. I mean, Louisville seems like it's big enough, quote unquote, that it could have a decent con. But yeah, I don't know what the barriers are or would be to that. So
It's scale. It's funny you mentioned Nerd Louisville. So I don't know if you're aware, maybe Jonathan mentioned it, but I'm also vice president currently of Nerd Louisville. So, but there
you're
was a lot
wearing
of work to do.
you're wearing
So
all the hats.
I'm wearing
You
it's
wear
it's
a
a
lot of
it's a heavy
hats.
mantle. It's a heavy mantle, and you know they kind of lost their way after the pandemic a little bit, and it
Well, it
was
just stopped
really
for like a year and a half.
yeah,
Like nobody did any events at all. So like
yeah, yeah.
finding who
Well,
are
they
the new
couldn't.
people and what are we doing and yeah.
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 So it's been a year of reorganization, and I think it'll always exist in some fashion or form, but it's charity, and I love its mission and the way that we accomplish that mission by, playing games to raise money. Great, awesome, awesome. Anything we do with Lurking Fears, it's for profit.
Sure.
We
Yeah,
want to make
it's
a
a
business out of that, even if it's something we just do once a year, but we want to make it big. We want to make it fun. We want to promote the games and, we want to make some money off of it too.
yeah.
So
I mean,
I'm not going to
that
let it
is
sacrifice for the quality, but that's what it's for, right?
yeah, that's a different mission definitely in mind, having most cons operate, they're not charities, they're for profit, they're trying
Right.
to, or at least they're, I mean, I don't know. I've never organized a con, but I imagine that they're all for profit or at least
Yeah.
like hoping to not lose too much money, right? They're hoping to break even. They're hoping to make enough that they can do it again next year.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So yeah, I don't know. It's well, good luck on any kind of like I look forward to a theoretical future Lurking
Yep.
Fears con here in Louisville.
Trust me,
Um,
well, you'll be one of the first doors we knock on. I guarantee you.
that's right. That's right. Yeah, and I don't know, like I guess Gamma Expo is
Mhm.
here for at least for the next couple years, so I think there could
Yeah.
be some synergy there with Gamma Expo and stuff.
Yep.
Um, hopefully, I don't know. We'll see. We can
Yeah, this will be our first year with it, so we'll see. Yeah, but we're under contract at the moment, so we'll be helping out Free League with some of their things. So
okay.
as far as Lurking Fears, Jonathan and Matt will spend some time, and we'll figure out how to make Lurking Fears at least there.
Hmm.
But professionally, it's we have the contract to help out, where we're currently called to. So
Yeah. Oh, well,
yeah,
that's cool.
yeah.
All right. Well, I think we're almost out of time for this chat. We've been talking for a little while, but I want to let you like where can people like both like all the things like how do people connect with Lurking Fears? Like what kind of like if people want to if a publisher wants to reach out, like how did this is the best way to do that? If a potential GM wants to reach out, do you have like lists of upcoming events that people who what games is Lurking Fears running at PAX Unplugged? I need to know because I got to sign up. All the different levels that you service. Where can people get that information?
Yeah, sure. So we do have the Lurking Fears website, lurkingfears.com. We do have links there if you are a GM that you want to run games with us, if you are a publisher, you want to start having conversations with us regarding, either us just running games or any of the services that we provide. Um, we usually will respond to emails fairly quickly, at least within 48 hours. Now, we will be at PAX Unplugged. I was just looking up for my schedule real quick. I'm trying to pull it up. So give me
A lot
just a
going on
second.
again.
Yeah,
Right,
so
right.
PAX Unplugged,
I,
we will have an entire room of Lurking Fears running games for multiple publishers, including wedding games.
ah, nice, nice.
That will be in Philadelphia the 6th through the 6th, 7th, 8th, and it will be in room 111 in the convention center.
Oh,
So you
easy to
would go
remember.
down escalator D
Mhm.
or E, and it is room 111. We will also be at GaryCon. We will have approximately 12 different tables running games at GaryCon. So we will be running the Shadow Dark for Arcane Library. You'll find us there. Lurking Fears will have its own area with other publishers that we are running with. And we will also be running for another publisher that I can't say yet, but we'll have about 3 or 4 tables with that one as well.
Ooh,
So we will have a big
secrets.
presence. Yeah, secrets.
Surprises, not secrets. Surprises.
There you go.
Surprises, good
Good surprise.
surprises.
Good surprise.
Honestly, it's not going to surprise anybody because they're going to be like, "Oh yeah, I figured you guys would be doing that." But yeah, so we will have a big presence at GaryCon. What's after GaryCon?
Um, onto Origins, really. I mean, that's the next big one after GaryCon.
That's the next big one.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
next big
I
one.
think
There's a couple of
we're
little ones we'll have, we'll dip our toe into some of the local things, but nothing organized. Really, we use those as I like to call them, fishing ponds. Go in
Mm,
there and play a couple games with some game masters. See if we can't, find some talented people that might want to go to some of these bigger cons, or at least, fly under the banner with us and, take the mission and run great games. So,
yeah.
yeah.
All right. Well, I think this has been a very interesting conversation. Is that I want to give you all, I mean, we went through a bunch of stuff, obviously, and fairly quickly. Is there anything final thoughts that you guys want to, either one of you want to share before we finally close out and I'll put links to like the stuff you mentioned in the video. But yeah, any final thoughts from either of you? Final
Um,
piece?
no, not really. I
Okay.
mean,
Anything you didn't get to
we
say?
got
Just
into yeah. I mean, we got into this business because we're gaming anyway, and we're already at the
mm,
conventions anyway. So now we just don't have to pay for our badges.
a little more complicated than that, but the dream is that everybody's experience at every con is going to be great, right? You go
mm,
there, it's a room full of strangers sometimes, and in the past it's been an absolute crapshoot. We really want to try to put some market pressure to make that better, right? Conventions are incredible. They're great. High energy stuff. Even if you only go to one or two a year, you go and you have an absolute blast, right? If you have a good experience.
mhm.
Lurking Fierce is really working to make sure that every experience, at least in our room, is going to be a quality experience where they're going to love that game, and they're going to think about that game, and it's going to be something that they can carry with them, right? That's a little mushy, but that's why we do this, right? We've been role playing for ever. We've been
Yeah,
role
yeah.
playing longer than our children have been alive,
Sure.
and we have a solid group of friends because of it, and that's a deep, nourishing, emotional smorgasbord, right? That keeps us going, right? That keeps us moving, and it's always something to look forward to. A lot of people come to these cons, it's the first time they've played, or they don't normally get to play with a lot of people. If they have a great time, awesome, awesome. If we make a few bucks on the side because of that, even better, right?
Sure.
But if they can have a great time, that's still a win too. So
All right. Well, again, thank you so much to each of you for your time. Betty and Chris, thank you for doing the work that you do. And you mentioned it there at the end. Like, yes, Wet Ink is a purchaser of your services because you do good work, and the people. I mean, I talked about this with Jonathan and Edwin both when I talked to them. Like, people come from the Lurking Fears room to the booth to tell us how much fun they had and where's the game, where can I get it, that kind of, do you have the game I just ran? I want to do that. So like that is the as a relatively small publisher compared to some of the others that you work with, you know, that's the benefit of putting down your dollars to get Lurking Fears to run the stuff. So thank you for that. You're doing a good job. And thank you for your time and sharing all the behind the scenes stuff. So
thank
and
you.
yeah, let's see. I always try to think of something to ask the viewers who I also appreciate what they can say in the comments. I don't know, tell us your best and or worst con story
There it
in
is.
the comments of the thing.
There
What's
you
what's
go.
your best GM experience or worst GM experience in the
I
comments?
want to hear
So
the worst, right? I want to hear the worst. That's where the unintentional comedy sometimes is, right?
mm,
Just let's hear the worst, right? So
all right. Thank you again. Thank you for
yeah,
watching. We'll see you around on the internet and maybe somewhere in town because we're all in the same town here. So.
definitely. All right. Thanks, Matt.